All right, everybody. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Um, can everybody hear me okay? Good. Okay. Well, I'm Jessica with the Community Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone this morning for our third nonprofit listening session through Zoom. We really appreciate everyone getting up early this morning and taking some time just to see one another and learn a little bit about how we work together to navigate the pandemic. So I'm just going to talk through a little bit what to expect today and then turn it over to our main speaker. So again, welcome everybody. We're super excited today to have Sarah Milston, CEO of the Spark Mill. Those of you who have been to different Community Foundation workshops and events in the past are probably familiar in one way or another with the Spark Mill. So Sarah and her team are based out in Richmond, but do across the state with different nonprofit organizations, everything from strategic planning with organizations to running different workshops and areas. And perhaps most notably, for those who've been part of Community Foundation work, they help us run the Nonprofit Accelerator. So it's a program started that we have brought here to the New River Valley, and we're real grateful to Sarah, Chris, and everyone on their team for the great work that they do. And they have not surprisingly been able to provide that kind of service during the pandemic as well remotely. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at the Spark Mill website. They have some really great webinars and resources around what we're going to talk about today, communications and fundraising, as well as just how to move different functions of your organization online and a slew of other things. So it made sense to ask Sarah to come and speak to our group today. So that is going to be the bulk of what we'll talk about today is communications and fundraising during the pandemic. And then we'll spend a very short amount of time as we wrap up at the end talking about a couple of resources and links available to you, and also what we'll be focused on at our next session on May 21st. So just a couple of things, a little, listening session etiquette, if you will. So if you would just mute your mic when you're not speaking, that'll help make sure that we can hear Sarah well and not have a lot of background noise. I mute you from my end as the host, so don't push me, as I say. Try to mute your mic when you can. But then if you do have a question or want to speak, use the chat feature to add questions to the chat just so we can monitor those. And then we will have time at the end of Sarah's talk to be able to ask questions of her and go through the chat as well. And we will post this recording of this on the Community Foundation's website, which you'll see the link later in the presentation. So you can go back to this as well as share it with others. So with that, I am going to move ahead and actually turn things over to Sarah to talk about communications and fundraising. And Sarah, you just tell me when you want to move through your different slides.
Sure. You can. So that's the Spark Mill. Jessica did probably the best introduction, so I don't think I need to add it. So you can skip through to the next one. So today's presentation is actually a mashup of two that we've given. So Jessica mentioned that we've been doing a bunch of webinars, and in the chat, I put a link to our COVID page because all of our webinars we've been recording. So it's a variety of different members of the Spark Mill team, but we did a full one on messaging and a full one on fundraising. And for today, I've put them together. And so we're going to cover a little bit on both items. And you guys are getting sort of hot off the press information because, as I told my kids, this has never happened to us in our lifetimes, so we don't really know. So we've been spending our extra time reading and looking at the trends and adjusting the messaging and fundraising webinars accordingly with the new information that we have. So I finished this last night, and so it's got some newer stuff. So if you're on the COVID page, you'll see webinars about equity, webinars about making decisions in a crisis, and then you'll see some fundraising and marketing ones, but I would stick with this one because this one's fresh as of today. So just there, you can go ahead. I think one of the things that everybody has been really inquisitive about is how do we talk to folks right now? So I think we had that first phase where everybody freaked out. We all went sort of head down. We got 1 million emails. We got an email from every company that ever owned our email address, and every nonprofit telling us how they were dealing with COVID. So we're past that phase. And now I think we're into the maintenance phase. You have likely figured out a slight path forward, even if it's still uncertain. You have either closed your offices or pivoted your services or you've adjusted to COVID-19. And so this is just sort of a reminder that you are. So your organization has the same brand, the same tone, the same persona. And so if you're normally bubbly and happy as a brand, you still need to be bubbly and happy and hopeful, even if you have some difficult things to share, because it's that consistency that gives people comfort in what they're seeing. So you can go ahead. So what do we actually say? Oh, okay, I put the social media slide here. So everybody's at their computer all day long. So there have been almost unprecedented numbers of people. So if you are on an Apple product and it tells you at the end of a week how many people are now talking to you, how many hours that you are spending on the internet, everybody's watch hours are like way up. And so it's a really good opportunity for you to be spending some comprehensive time posting Twitter, all sort of hotspots. And I think, people that traditionally didn't participate are now participating in social media. So some of our older folks that we have, sometimes said, well, they don't do social media. They're all on social media because they had to figure out a Zoom. I was on a committee meeting the other day and we had an 89-year-old gentleman join the meeting. And it was his first Zoom ever. And he did a great job. So I think, this will be something that will stay with us afterwards for sure, is that people have just gotten over whatever hump that they had with regard to online things. So right now, I think the number as of yesterday was that there's an 18% increase in social media usage during the epidemic. And the ad sales have also gotten less expensive. So essentially what happened is the way that they sell ads is, it's based on frequency of views. Well, Coke, Gap, Old Navy, those places are buying less ads. So that means there's more ad space that Facebook needs to sell. And so that means that the average cost of ads has gone down up to 20%. So you're still going to pay your $10 or your $20, but you're going to get more bang for your buck out of it. So it's a great time for you to use that. And then the last thing I think is a reminder that video content is the most approachable, the most interesting, and it gets you the furthest in all of those mediums. And because we're all stuck at home, nobody expects you to have a fully developed, beautiful video. So you can just grab screenshots and videos of your supporters, your clients talking about this. You can do it from Zoom. All of that is working right now. So you want to go ahead? So what do we say? So what I'm suggesting in terms of your narrative structure is sort of threefold. So first, you want to address what was your life like before COVID. So your impacts, I call it PC, pre-COVID. So if you were serving 1,000 people a year, then you want to highlight that in a long sentence structure. So, even though before COVID, it looked like this, during COVID is the next part. So during COVID, here are the pivots or adaptations. So that could be, we've transitioned our food pantry into everyday services, or we have transitioned the housing into rapid rehousing, whatever you have done to adjust or adapt. And it could be we've closed all of our offices and sent our workers home, but we're continuing to do work. You just want to address how you have pivoted or adapted with COVID. And then the last thing to do is that hopeful tone, which is after. What is your organization's individual role in recovery? So what are you going to do to help society, the community, your stakeholders recover from it? So that's sort of the 3-tier. You want to address who you were before this. You want to talk about what you're doing during, and then you want to talk about, your role in recovery. You can go ahead. And I keep looking to the side because that's where my notes are. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about who needs this message. And I think it's important that your message and how you're delivering it differs depending on the audience. So some of you may have more audiences. Obviously, this photo was taken before social distancing, but I think it's important to think about the big three. So program recipients and clients. So you want to be getting continuous feedback from them in some way. How are they impacted? What does it look like? What kind of changes in their life have they done? How are you grabbing that information informally right now? It's not like you can sit down with a stakeholder and do that. But when you're communicating with them, it's really, how were you previously using the services of our organization, and how can we serve you now? For donors, you want to be hopeful, but also provide real information. So we're going to spend a lot of time on fundraising in a little while. But the other piece is to be really clear about the money that you need to fill gaps. So there's a great example name. So this is an organization from the outer, more rural parts of the Richmond area, Shalom Farms. And they do food security. So they have a large farm and they grow vegetables and then they distribute them. And maybe like 2 weeks after the pandemic hit, they sent a very good fundraising email. Essentially, it followed that communication format that I suggested. So it said, because of COVID, we have had to adapt how we're doing things on the farm, where we would normally expect, I'm making numbers up, 10,000 volunteers. Because of social distancing, now we're not able to do that. And so what we need to do is to hire 2 temporary farm workers to help us get all the vegetables and the plants in and take care of them during prime season. And that's going to cost $25,000. So what we're asking for is your help in raising that money. So it was like 2 sentences, but it was very clear. Here was what our life was like before. Here's what we're going to do to adapt. And here's your role in making that happen. So then the last one is the community. And so I think the message for the community is we're still here. We're in this together. We are partners in action with you. Here's what you can do. We can get through this by working together. You want some narratives of hope and collective progress. People have varied opinions on the severity of this situation. They have varied opinions on government decisions to close, not close, test, not test. So unless you're an advocacy organization or you're advocating on behalf of a marginalized population that this has a disparate effect on, you want to kind of stay out of that space, but really focus on the space of, we're with you. We want to exist afterwards. I was talking to a downtown organization, so like a Main Street organization yesterday. And part of what we were talking about is she was reluctant. And what I told her is it's absolutely essential that you fundraise because your role in the recovery is going to be really important. So instead of focusing on what you're doing now, you're going to focus your message on what is our future role. And what I need for you to do is to help me make sure that I have a future. So you can go ahead. Maybe. Okay, so I wanted to take a second and see if anybody had any discrete questions about messaging before we shift into fundraising. So in the messaging as well. But if anybody had a burning question that was related to that, you could throw it in the chat now and be happy to address it, or we can just do them at the end. Okay, so we can shift on to the next one, Jessica, thank you. So with fundraising, you know, there's a lot of good lessons that we can take from the 2008 to 2010. Right now, looking at some national trends, is that there's going to be a financial impact on the nonprofit sector. We have helped a handful of organizations close down or go into what I'm terming a hibernation state. So lay off staff and get down to a bare bones budget to see if they can come back on the other end of this. So we're going to lose some nonprofits throughout this process. But people are still giving money. People are still giving a lot of money. We had Giving Tuesday earlier this week. I haven't seen any data on that yet to know how successful that was, but people are less cautious than we think they are. And the majority of people that are motivated to give, many of them still have jobs and are still making gifts. So I think the other thing to do is to remember that giving an email opens her up. So sending email newsletters, those sorts of things, it's definitely a time for you to do that because people are literally at their computers for much of the day, even people that traditionally wouldn't be. So people that are restaurant employees or salon owners, people that don't have a job that centers around a computer, they are on their computers now. So screen time, super way up. We talked about that. The best thing for you to do here around fundraising is to lean directly into your mission. What is your role in community goodwill and what that looks like? So one of the questions that we get is, should we stop fundraising? And absolutely not. You do need to do it in a slightly strategic way that respects the tone of this moment. But all of the data shows that nonprofits who fundraised less during the 2008 to 10 recession raised a lot less money than those that just stayed the track and invested in fundraising. So now it's time to really stay strong when it comes to fundraising. That doesn't mean you have to bombard your supporters, but it is really important that you are not shy about your needs for funds. You can go ahead. So what do we do? Oh, so I forgot I had that slide. So yes, should we stop? No, tone is really important. So if an organization is needing to think about laying off staff in order to make it through, we're highly suggesting that fundraising staff is not the staff to go, just because you really need to maintain a constant presence during the pandemic. Okay, so you can go ahead now. So what do we do now? So the first thing you ought to do is to revise your development plans. So what we're suggesting is sort of a 4-level planning. So where we normally would plan for 12 months out, we would have a beautiful event scheduled at some point. I really think that you should be planning for 2 to 3 days. So Monday morning, what are you going to do that week? What are you going to tackle? One of the challenges that we're facing is because the information just changes so quickly. It can be difficult to make long-term plans. So go ahead and make your 2 to 3 day plan of, these are the 5 donors I'm going to talk to. This is when I'm going to pull the trigger on a fundraising appeal. The next tier is to look at 4 weeks, so 1 month out. So we have a big date coming up next Friday from the governor. We may enter phase 1. So I think that that's important to sort of keep in mind in terms of your messaging, but don't count on it. So 4 weeks out seems like a safe span of time to make a plan. And then you want to think 3 months out. So let's get to mid-summer, and then let's get to plans that are further in the distance. Those are written in pencil, and you're not spending tons of time on them. You're just sort of sketching out your very best ideas, because the world around us is just evolving and changing so quickly that it's not worth your energy. So we're going to talk about events in a little while, and I think that's the one place that you need to spend some concerted time thinking about the future. So the next thing to do is to review your ask. So in this case, we're actually seeing some nonprofits that are raising more money than they were expecting pre-COVID. And so that's because Maslow's hierarchy of needs is really taking a front stage right now. So food, shelter, education, basic needs, those are the things that lots of donors, including foundations and corporations, are sort of gravitating towards. So you want to look and be real honest about what is your role in those essential services. I do think that we're starting to see a slight shift where people are getting nervous that some nonprofits might not exist on the back broadly than it was in the first couple of weeks of the pandemic. Number 3, you want to create a staffing plan. So this is like literally some of it is logistics. So who's going to get the mail? How are you going to open checks and deposit checks? How often are you going to do that? I wouldn't focus on, if you have emails for people, I would really focus on that for right now. But certainly you're going to have some donors that are going to mail in checks. So who's going to be putting things in the database or in QuickBooks? Just make sure you have a really clear plan on who's doing what. So maybe you're a one-person shop. So then what I would say to you is, what hour of the day are you going to spend on fundraising? And make sure that you're covering all the bases. Because what we don't want to have happen is we open up the offices and we get a giant stack of stuff, and then we get backed up and we can't get everything into the database. Embrace technology. So we talked a little bit about social media, but I do think this is a moment where the whole world is getting more comfortable. I mean, I can't imagine how many Zoom calls that I've been on. Probably do a webinar every day. And so you have figured it out, but that means your constituents have as well, your donors have. And so, you know, check in with them, but also embrace technology as a way to connect with people, do some online campaigns, online giving, all sorts of things. And then I think it's important to really think about retention versus acquisition. So some organizations have a great opportunity right now to acquire new donors. So if you live in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs space, or you've pivoted your services to be able to address front essential workers of any kind, mask making, whatever you have done, it is an opportunity for you to communicate with new stakeholders around that. But the bulk of your energy should be spent on retaining the donors that you do have. And so you really want to focus on what are called LIBUNts, which is, so go back to your lapsed donors. Most development databases will have an automatic way to pull that. It's just called a LIBUNT report. There's also something called a SIBUNT report, which is some year, but unfortunately not this. So it's just an acronym, but those are both great reports for you to reach back out a little deeper to people that haven't been engaged with you in the last 12 months and see if you can re-engage them right now, especially if you're doing something really important on the road to recovery. So your people to unless you're working in the community. So major donors is a great space for you to say and be really clear. And again, this is not doomsday. This is what is happening. This is our role in it. We need your help. And here is the very clear dollar amount that it's going to cost for us to be able to do this. So we're seeing a lot of major donors accelerate their giving. Many of them got stimulus checks that they don't need. And so that's been a great way for them to transition and transfer some of that wealth over into nonprofit organizations. One thing to consider is to try to move your $50 to $100 donors to monthly sustainers. So just reaching out to them and asking them to commit to do that for sustainability purposes, to help you plan for the future. You know, everybody wants stable income, and I think it's fine for nonprofits to ask for that stable income. The other thing is to focus on right now is building your list. So anything you can do to capture an email address, if that is putting up a a newsletter pop-up on your website, or we're not doing mail right now, we'd really like to communicate with you. If you pass your email, we'll do that any way you can to get more emails into your system, just because that's primarily what we're all focusing on right now. Okay, Jessica, you can go ahead. So engagement plans, how do we actually stay in touch with our donors? So for stewardship, which is the care and tending of current and new donors, what you're really thinking that this is the great time to call and check in on your donors. You want to be interested in them and their health. You want to explain what's happening at your organization and build the case why funding is more important than ever. You also want to meet people where they are. So we have like a book an appointment link on our website, and it says, would you prefer a phone call or a Zoom? I'm tired of Zoom and really want that visual connection. So when you reach out to a donor, ask them. They may not want a phone call. That may turn them off, or they may want to sit in a Zoom. It's just an opportunity for you to talk to them and see what they're doing. So even in the midst of super crazy times, you ought to be connecting with a handful of donors every day. It really is going to distinguish you from other organizations. Second, around transparency and communication. So I would say not too often and not too much. So I think it depends on what you're communicating. Since people are consuming media so much more and ads are less expensive, it makes sense to communicate more, but not to the point where you're annoying people. So while email opens have been increasing, unsubscribes have also been increasing because we're at our computer all day. I mean, I'm taking a chance right now to try to prune my email list for sure. So if some company is emailing me, I'm like, oh, I don't know who that is, I'm going to unsubscribe. So that's definitely happening. So you don't want to get caught in that. I think the other opportunity is to build community through online platforms. So anything you can do to gather people together. So people have been doing a lot of pop-ups or donor circles or, community listening sessions where it's like, come in and just tell us, saw a local business yesterday. They did study hall, which is like, just come, we're going to be on a Zoom together, but we're all going to be doing our individual work. So like a silent reading party. Those are all opportunities for you to build up community a little bit. Okay, you can go to the next one. Even this is the really tough spot that a lot of organizations are finding themselves in, whether you had a spring event or a summer event, or you have a fall event that's still technically on the calendar. So here's a sort of decision matrix that we've been sharing with people. What you're really focusing on here is, in your decision to cancel an event or go forward, is what is the last day you can make a decision without having to pay additional money? So let's say you have a deposit on the space because you're doing some gala. And then at the end of May, that's when you have to print the invitations. So the question would be at the end of May, do we need to print the invitations? Can we transfer them online? If you can't, then is the money that we're going to put into this worth it in case we can have the event? I've seen most spring and summer events get canceled or pushed to the fall. I will say that if we get through all of our phases and we emerge as a new society with different rules of engagement in the fall, it's going to be so busy. We're going to have so many events. And so really, instead of focusing on the income side of your event, look at the full picture, the net picture. So how much money will you save by not having the event? Not just how much you will raise, because if you're, spending $15,000 to put on a $70,000 event, then you're still saving 15 if you don't do it. So just using those as sort of decision drivers to figure that out. In terms of on events, so this is something that was popular a handful of years ago, but now it's seen a resurgence, which is just, hey, we're going to have an on-event. There was one organization, I think it was in Charlottesville, that did this on April Fool's Day every year. They had an on-event. It's like nobody wants to put on a cocktail dress anyway, so join us for this on-event. So you can think about, is there any electronic way for you to transfer your event? Will it raise the same amount of money? Absolutely not, but it's still an opportunity and something to think about. I think the other thing to do is in soliciting event and donors and sponsors is don't automatically give everyone their money back for ticket sales or for sponsorship. Ask. Many organizations are finding that their ticket holders just transfer them into a donation because it's money out of their pocket anyway, and they understand the situation. Same with sponsors. So you should definitely reach out to any sponsor that you have and ask to convert it to unrestricted. Many of them already had it in their budget. They've already expended it. And so especially if you've already received the money, most of them have been willing just to transfer it rather than to ask for it back. So don't automatically just think it's all 100% lost. In terms of corporations and foundations, I think they're a little different. I don't necessarily think that this is a prime opportunity to be engaging in corporate fundraising. Many corporations are trying to figure out how they're going to make it through the end of the year. Some of them saw, their revenue 100% dry up overnight. And so unless you have a really close contact with that corporation, I would say it's not the best time. Foundations, on the other side, super different. Most of them have announced some kind of emergency funding. Most of them are loosening restrictions on gifts. So if you're sitting on a restricted grant right now, it is worth your time and energy to reach back out to them and ask them to loosen the restrictions or to transfer it into an unrestricted gift that you can use for general operating. I have seen state and federal grants be much less flexible with that, but most foundations, private foundations, community foundations have done that. So it's like I told somebody yesterday, it doesn't hurt to ask. The worst thing that can happen is they say no, and then you just have to adjust to it. But it's definitely worth your sort of time and energy. In terms of foundation trends and insights, I think that we're seeing an increase in giving from a lot of them, but because the pandemic paired with the economic downturn, many foundations lost a significant amount of money in their portfolio, depending on how they had everything invested. So their giving might not have increased, but as a percentage of their total, it did. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. But I think it's really important to be in contact with your local, but also national funders. So if you're a niche organization, you're serving a very specific population, and there is a national funder that also serves that, it's worth it to be in touch with them, because we're seeing people sort of change their geographic limitations as a way, because it's something that is touching every state for sure. So, okay, you want to go to the next one? That might be it. Okay, so that's sort of, I have more to say about all of those different pieces, but my favorite part of any talk is the questions portion. So I definitely want to see if anybody has any specific questions. If you use the chat feature, if you could just tell me your organization, that would be really helpful, because it'll just give me a little bit of grounding for any advice that I have to offer. I know it's early, but you guys came for some reason, so you can certainly ask some questions.
Questions, everybody from the group for Sarah? I know, Sarah, I don't know if you want to maybe speak a little bit to this, but the New River Valley, we have our annual online giving day coming up on June 4th.
Okay.
Called Give Local NRV. And so we are obviously encouraging any nonprofit to sign up and take part in that, because of course they get to raise money online, but leverage marketing. I don't know if you have any insights. I know Giving Days, of course, Giving Tuesday, but other Giving Days have been going on. Any insights particular to those that this group might want to hear from what you've seen?
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna pull the link, but we did a webinar on Giving Tuesday, now Giving Tuesday now, that had some specific information about that. So I'm gonna pull that up really quick. It's so earlier I put the COVID-19 page, which is where we've been putting all of our webinars that we're doing. Putting recordings of them. Yeah, so Giving Tuesday now, tips and tricks. So yeah, it's on that page. I was just double checking, and the presentation is on that page too. So if you're not a Zoom person and you don't want to listen to the webinar, you can do that. So I think the big thing to focus on with that is it's just, there's so many people on social media, and the number one thing that you can do right now to ensure a seamless transaction is to make sure that your online donation portal, however you're accepting donations, is working. So what I'm telling people is to go to your nonprofit and donate $1 and walk through the process as a donor. See how it feels. Is it clunky? Was it easy? Could you do things? That's definitely a place for you to focus energy on and figure out how you could adapt your process without spending a lot of money. I do think that that's really important, because people that historically have not donated online are donating online right now. And so you have people that are sort of unfamiliar with how it works. So you just want to ensure that it's absolutely seamless on your end for getting those donations. And then the ad stuff. I mean, I just cannot, you know, as social media has transitioned into a space where it became more pay to play. You know, ads have gotten more expensive, and I would say that this is just a great opportunity for you to get your message out to even more people. So what I typically do for an ad is I'll put up a post, and then don't listen to Facebook or Instagram when it says this post is outperforming 80%. Look at the information yourself, look at the insights for both of them and see. And if the post is doing well, then I would absolutely boost that one. You can also just boost your page, but the ad costs are so much less. So, you know, allotting $50 to put ads up on okay, Andy has a question. He's with the nonprofit Child Abuse Prevention Agency. Oh yeah, after. So Andy's essentially saying we're not critical right now, but we're going to be critical in recovery. And so how do we do that in a graceful way? Well, so I think you guys are actually in a kind of service provider that has an opportunity right now to talk about the long-term effects of the pandemic. So right now we're all focused on getting our offices open, getting things back running. But what we know is, you know, child abuse is, of course, not exclusively, but often linked to poverty. And what has happened during this crisis is we have a whole new population of people that will be living in poverty once we get through this. So, you know, we know people living in poverty are often part of a generational cycle of poverty. And so we are going to have communities of people that have never experienced poverty before, but are in it there, and the amount of trauma and stress that that situation will create with families. So child abuse, I mean, we know domestic violence is already increasing. I think we can assume that child abuse, unfortunately, is increasing right now just because of the stress of managing the situation. And so whether we don't have direct evidence of that yet, I think you can safely say it is. So I don't actually think that you need to be graceful about it. I think spotlighting and advocating on behalf of children, letting people know about the disparate effects, about the increase in violence in homes under moments of high stress. You know, I feel like I'm a great parent. And even my kids are driving me crazy. And they're lovely, well-behaved children. And occasionally I make them go outside and shut the door because this is a tricky time, because you have whole family systems never having breathers, never having breaks from each other. So even the families that you've never had to worry about before are now under such heightened stress. Then you add in any financial stress that a family has from being unemployed. Right now, with unemployment, many people are okay. You know, if they got laid off, then likely they've been able to access unemployment. And if they're getting a $600 bump, many people are finding that they're actually making more money on unemployment than they were before, which will be a little bit of a tricky challenge when everything opens back up. So they're not feeling the financial stress, but you know, I think we're going to have an after effect. So I think, you know, Andy, child abuse, the trends, the patterns, and I think that you can just overlay that onto the pandemic and go ahead and draw some conclusions for people, help them see it. That's been a really effective thing. I think that organizations that work with underserved or marginalized communities have done a really good job right now of spotlighting how this pandemic is affecting them differently, more severely and more intensely. And so I think you have a great opportunity to do that. So don't be shy. So you said, you know, do graceful. I don't even think you need to be graceful. Just be like pointed, let people know. Anybody else?
Everybody keep asking questions in that chat. I actually have another one, Sarah. I know some people on the call are with museums or arts organizations, and wondering if you had any advice for these, you know, thinking about that hierarchy of needs. You know, we know that arts in many ways are incredibly important for, you know, emotional and mental health. But, you know, what are some of the ways you're seeing arts organizations make the pivot in this framework of fundraising that you're suggesting?
Yeah, so I think the most impactful arts organizations have been able to remind people that they exist by way of connecting with the art. So you've seen tons of museums. If you're literally a museum, then you still have to have staff to guard your collections and maintain all of that. So I think it's really important that you are capturing pictures. You know, the large museums, they've got beautiful virtual connections. So skip the beautiful part. I mean, skip the, you know, don't think about it so hard. Grab your phone and walk around and take pictures of things. I know on our social media content, we've had a lot of designed things because we're not doing anything in person. And so I was worried that our accounts were getting too, they just weren't personable enough, which is an important part of ours. So I just started going back to old pictures that we had used before or we had taken and sharing those up forward. So I think it's important for arts organizations not to take up all of the space of the sort of essential workers in the health and well-being, but to remind people that you are what brings people joy. And so whatever virtual joy you can bring to people by bringing in what's actually still present. So if you are a physical space, taking pictures, doing videos of your physical space and doing that. Oh, Sarah. So Sarah's with Wonder Universe, which is the Children's Museum. So congratulations on your opening. I think it happened this year, your new space. And the group we usually serve. Well, so I think, so her question is the group that we usually serve aren't on social media. Yeah, but you know what? They all are now, number one. But number two, I think the other challenge is you got a whole bunch of parents at home with their kids. So I've been watching the Cincinnati Zoo. They do a 10-minute Zoom every day where they just showcase a different animal. So, you know, depending on what your staffing looks like, Sarah, I think you have the opportunity to, um, you know, a 5-minute craft. Yesterday, for Giving Tuesday, an arts organization called Art on Wheels in the Richmond area, let me put their name in here, you can look them up. They did a fantastic campaign where they encouraged people to make this one craft, which was like a heart, but it had a very complicated folding thing. So they folded it and turned it into a sort of an infographic explanation on how to do it, and then encourage people to post. So, you know, I think that there's definitely stuff that arts organizations, museums, children's museums that you can do. You know, it's like, okay, so you just finished your 5th yogurt of the day. What can we build with this? Show us your best build. I think in the beginning, people rushed to service the children. Parents got overwhelmed, and so now they've backed off a little bit. But I do think anything that you can do to tie in community. So, you know, if you can play on your name, wonder. Ever wondered why the sky is blue? Here we'll tell you. Submit your ever wondered for the next couple of days, and somebody will answer it. So I think, you know, you just have to think a little bit outside the box. What is the mission? What could you do? That's a little bit more programs, but it helps maintain a focus that you're still there, that you're still doing useful things, and that you're still relevant. And I think the big thing for lots of organizations that are dipping into the crisis zone in terms of funding right now is part of your message is, we want to be with you in the future. We are really useful for the future. So we need you to help us get to the future. Any other questions?
Other questions for Sarah? Well, Sarah, this has been incredibly helpful. I gained a lot, as you can see from the chat, a lot of folks just really appreciating. I can't stress enough, everybody go to the SparkNows website. They've got really great content on that COVID-19 page. They are just such a resource, and we're fortunate to have a good connection to them down here in the NRV. I think what Sarah said as well, and you guys have echoed here, is that there's a lot of innovation happening in the NRV right now. I have seen how many organizations like Wonder Universe, like so many others, are pivoting their services online, doing really great content online. So keep that up, because your intuition seems to fit really well with what Sarah's talking about. Now we need to figure out how to turn that into dollars for organizations. So just thank you so much, Sarah, for spending the time with us this morning. We really appreciate it, the time that you're spending, and encourage folks to go take a look at that website. So just kind of as we wrap up, everybody, moving ahead a little bit to what you can expect. So this call has been recorded, so we're going to go ahead and post that on the Community Foundation's COVID-19 page. That will include the PowerPoint as well as this recording, so you can take a look through that. All of our past ones are also on there. So we've had a general opening kind of listening session to hear what's on folks' minds. We had Bill Flattery from Carillion and Rebecca Richardson from Virginia Community Capital talking about healthcare in the NRV, and then funding resources respectively. So that's on there. So just go take a look at those resources and then come back to this one. Our next call is going to be on May 21st, and we're thrilled that Rebecca Moore from NRV Community Services is going to be talking about mental and emotional health. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, so it's really a good time to be thinking about how all of this is stressing us, our communities, our children, the people that we serve. So we hope you'll come back on May 21st. That Zoom link will be added in the next couple days online, so keep an eye out for that. And then just a couple other opportunities for you to share what's going on with your organizations. The Community Foundation has an online form that we're asking nonprofits to fill out that talks about your activities right now. Are you open, or how are you delivering services? And in particular, what are your needs, whether they be volunteers, in kind, or financial, and how can folks support you? So if we can get more responses to that, we will be sharing that on our website and with a variety of different stakeholders that work with us. So if you would take the time just to fill that out, that would be a huge help to us. And then finally, if there are particular topics that you want us to cover in these online listening sessions going forward, we also have a quick form you can fill out about things that you're experiencing as an organization or things that you would like to hear about. So that's kind of what we've got going forward. I'll give one last chance if anyone has comments or things or questions they want to put in the chat. If not, we'll finish up for today and hopefully see everyone again on the 21st. Any final thoughts or comments from anyone? Well, thank you all so much for taking the time this morning. I know that adding one more Zoom call seems like a bridge too far sometimes, but we really hope that this has been helpful. And I know that Sarah is a huge resource to all of us. So thank you all for being a part of it. And we will see you again in a couple weeks on May 21st to hear from Rebecca Moore. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.